Hi, I'm Cedric from RTINGS.com.
And I'm Daniel.
So today we're doing a live stream to answer your questions about the Sony A9F. So the first 20 minutes, we're going to answer your questions that you have in the chat about the Sony A9F. And then after that, we're going to do a 10 minutes of open questions as usual, where you can ask whatever you want to us. So while we wait for your questions to come in the chat about the A9F, let's start, Daniel, with what's the difference between the A9F and last year's A1E?
So overall, if you just look at them from the front, the design is relatively similar. The stand at the back is a little bit different, but they look relatively similar as far as design goes. Mm-hmm. As far as picture quality as well, they're quite similar. The A9F though, it's got lower input lag, which is good for gamers. And
a difference of like 15 milliseconds, something like that?
Yeah, at 1080p it's a bit more. At 4K it's less significant, but at 1080p there's an input lag difference. And it's also got a newer Android Oreo interface, which is much faster.
Yeah, that's a big improvement. So let's say that if you had bought already an A1E, would you upgrade?
No. The differences between them are relatively minor. So there's a small difference in input lag, the difference in the interface, but for most people, it probably shouldn't bother them enough to justify the cost.
Yeah, the A9 is a better TV, but it's it's not much difference compared to A1E. But there's a few differences, which we're going to expand on a little bit more in this video.
Feels like more of a refinement of the previous model. They kind of fixed a few key points that people didn't like about the A1. So.
Yeah, and let's talk about one of the big points that people didn't like about it, and the Android.
Yes.
So can you talk a bit about the improvements?
Yeah, it's much faster now. You can see the interface itself is also a bit different, which some people might prefer. It allows you to find different apps a bit faster, discover content. But overall, the biggest difference is the speed. You can see scrolling menus, opening up the interface, closing it. It's just it's much faster than before. Adjusting settings, basically. The whole time you're using the TV, if you're using the interface, you will notice a difference.
Oh yeah, because with the older Android, it's on Sony TVs, it's pretty slow and almost unusable in most cases. At least if you use it on a daily basis, it's not that great.
And especially for us here, we unplug and plug in the TVs because we move them around quite often, and going from a cold boot, this isn't likely to affect most people, but sometimes you can be waiting a few minutes if you do a cold boot on an Android TV.
But this one is definitely faster for this. So it's definitely an improvement there. What about the sound? Now the sound is interesting on that TV.
Yeah. So the A9F has what Sony calls the Acoustic Surface Plus. So the screen itself is actually it actually vibrates to produce some of the sound, and it's got two subwoofers also on the side. So yeah, for a TV, it's better than most TVs. It's an improvement, and it's got a few neat features. Like if you've got an external receiver and some external speakers, you can actually use the TV itself as your center channel, which it's kind of cool. So when you're watching a movie or something, the sound is actually coming from where it's coming from.
Yeah, instead of coming from, let's say, below, then it's directly from the screen, which is great when people are talking. So that's a pretty neat feature. Yeah,
it is cool for people that don't want to buy a sound bar or don't want to get external speakers or something. Then the Sony it at least has better quality speakers.
Yeah, it's one of the few TVs who rated green for sound. I believe there's maybe a handful of them, but it's not that many.
I'm not sure. This one might be borderline, I think.
Okay.
But, overall, it actually tested a little bit worse than the A1E.
And do you know why?
I'm not sure exactly. I think we measured a bit more distortion, but...
I believe just in the higher frequency, there's a little bit higher stuff. It seems that we're having a bit of a sync issue, so let us know in the chat if you hear us well and if you mind a little bit syncing problems that we have.
Otherwise, we can just restart it at some point.
But yeah, so it seems that the distortion is a bit higher. Is that?
Yeah. It looks like that's what it is. There's a bit more. Yeah.
Is it audible though?
It's. I think Sam actually listened to them side by side, the A1 and the A9, and he could tell the differences with some sweeps, but overall it was relatively
It's about
close.
the same, yeah. But it's a definitely great sound, and especially if you want to get rid of your center channel. So let's start answering some questions that you have in the chat. So first, DDE44 asks, does the monitor support 12-bit 422?
So I believe, actually I can have a look now, but I believe you can send a 12-bit signal, but that doesn't mean that it will be able to display it. So on our gradient test, it basically it can display the 10-bit pattern very smoothly, which we'll talk about later, but you're unlikely to get much benefit from 12 bits, sorry. And I'll just have a go now with the PC. Yes, so at the moment I'm sending a 12-bit 422 signal to it at 4K 60 Hertz.
Another kind of questions from Nicolas Bonvarlet that says, he just got our PM on Twitter about dimming. Unfortunately, dimming is happening in HDR, not SDR, so the FIFA clip should not trigger it.
Okay, we will need to investigate that some more and test that.
Can you expand a little bit more on the issue for the other people that are watching that are not familiar with it?
Yeah, on some Sony TVs, on the Sony OLEDs, people have experienced dimming during games. So if they're playing like FIFA or another game, then when there's some areas of static content, it can cause the screen to dim. So we tested that out today with a few clips of gameplay from FIFA and from Red Dead Redemption, and we didn't find it to happen on the A9, but we tested it in SDR, so we'll have to do another test in HDR to see what difference that makes.
And that feature basically is to prevent the screen from excessive burn-in, so it's kind of a prevention feature, but it seems to be behaving a little bit differently than LG OLED for this.
Yeah, and it seems to be a little bit more aggressive as to what it considers like a static screen. So with all of the OLED TVs we've tested, they all dim the screen with static images. Yeah. You'll even probably notice throughout this video, if we're not doing anything on the TV, then it will probably dim over time after a few minutes.
Yeah. So like if you pause a movie, then it's going to dim itself after a few minutes.
And most of the time that should only affect you if you've basically paused something or there's static content. But it seems that in some cases it will impact like gameplay where there's static areas.
Oh, there's Ian Bauer mentioned some bad links going at the moment. So we're gonna restart the stream just to fix the issue then. So be with us. We're just gonna close the stream, restart it just to fix the syncing issue in like 30 seconds. It shouldn't be long. Are we back?
Once you turn on and should be back.
Okay, so let us know in the chat if it's now fixed the syncing issue. Hopefully it is. Okay, so let's continue. I forgot where we're at, but we can. Oh yeah,
we can take another question, I think, because we were talking a little bit about how and when dimming might occur on the
which is a follow-up questions from Nicolas Bonvarlet. That could you please test HDR gaming to measure how it dims? And yeah, so that's something we're gonna do probably earlier next week.
Yep.
And then we can send the update via Twitter to see how it behaves for this. So other questions from Nagarahu. I cannot pronounce the other name. How is the upscaling and picture processing of the new X1 Ultimate processor on the A9F compared to the X1 Extreme processor of A8F?
So that's something that we don't actually test it objectively. We've tried to in the past, but upscaling, the different people have different preferences, and some people might prefer like a sharper upscaling or a little bit softer. So overall,
It's,
We can say it's good, and there are lots of options to adjust it as you prefer. So we can have a look at some of these.
But like compared to the A8,
it's maybe marginal differences.
yeah, the differences is more as far as like the processor goes, like input lag. Is there a difference between the A8 and the?
Yes, there is. So the A9 has lower input lag.
Yeah, so that's a difference. And also, all on that subject, all ports now support the full bandwidth.
Yeah, which is definitely a good improvement. So for a bit of context, previous Sony TVs, except for the Z9F and the A9F, they were limited to only 2 HDMI ports that supported HDMI full bandwidth. And one of these was also the ARC port to connect to a receiver. So some people with multiple high bandwidth devices, they had problems connecting all of them and might have needed like an external switch or something. But in the case of the A9F and the Z9F, all of the ports actually support full bandwidth signals. So if you've got an HDR console, a PC, 4K Blu-ray player, then you can plug it into any of the ports and it works well.
Questions from Philip Tixon. Can you really see a significant picture improvement of the A1 versus A8F when watching a movie with this one? So A8 versus, this one and versus the A1. So all three of the Sony OLED, is there a significant difference when watching a movie?
So overall, they have fairly similar picture quality. The main points like the perfectly deep blacks, that's true for all of them, each of the OLED TVs. The A9F does seem to have a few refinements though, so the gradient is actually the best gradient that we've tested so far.
On the A9?
On the A9, yeah.
Okay.
So that it does seem to be an improvement over the A1 or the A8.
Do you think it's a panel variance?
We don't actually know that. So we only bought one model of the A9, and OLEDs and other TVs do vary a little bit between different models, or different units. So we don't know if that's something that might be a little bit better on the unit that we bought compared to the others, or if it's a change across the board.
Yeah, so in summary, for movies, it's all about the same. A little bit better with the A9, but it's not a significant difference for movies. There's a bigger difference for gaming because of the input lag difference.
Yeah.
But for actual movies, A9 is better, but it's not the...
And another interesting point is actually the color volume is the best that we've measured from an OLED. So it seems that most OLEDs with their WRGB panel, they can produce brighter whites than they can produce the colors relatively, whereas the A9 seems to perform better at this. And again, we don't know if that's specific to this unit or across the board, all A9s perform better for the color volume. And we can show you an image of that here.
Yeah, you can show it on the website. Okay, the screen sharing should work, or it seems to not work.
Oh, sorry, that's the...
We have a bit of technical issues today compared to the usual. We can kind of see it on the TV, I guess.
Yeah. So you can see here is a color volume measurement, and one thing you'll notice about the A9 compared to other OLEDs we've tested is they actually fill out this top area a little bit. So what this is it's measurements of the colors at different brightness levels, and the A9 is able to produce a wide color gamut, so it can fill out much of this space. This is the top-down view of it. And compared to the other OLEDs, it's able to also fill out a bit more of this high brightness space up here, which might be noticeable in movies, but overall it's a relatively small difference.
So a question from Grey Fox Indie. When using the AF9, so the European equivalent, as a monitor, what settings should you select on the Nvidia control panel? Would these settings also be fine for watching movies via the PC and gaming 10-bit 422 or 444? So which settings using as a monitor, either for watching movies or for gaming?
Yes, so usually for a PC monitor, you want to use the Chroma 444 or RGB color. Either one of those is good, and that's basically the full color resolution. So it's most noticeable around text and things that it'll appear a little bit more clear with 444 or RGB color. Other than that, though, you want your refresh rate to be high, so 60 hertz. You don't want to drop it down. Or you could even, when you're gaming, do it at 1080p, 120 hertz. They're the most important settings.
Okay. Question from David Rubio. Is there enough quality difference to justify the price between the LG C8 and the Sony A8F? So not the A9, but the A8.
So
C8 versus A8.
For most people, it's probably not. The overall performance of them is relatively similar. The C8 actually has a bit lower input lag for gaming, which is a good thing. And also it has the faster WebOS smart interface rather than the relatively slow Android on the Sony.
On the A8, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But the Sony A8, yeah, it's still a great TV. Both TVs have great picture quality, but most people are probably better off going with the C8.
Yeah, so it's not enough difference to justify the price, at least for most people. Unless you care really about a very, very specific aspect of the A8, you're probably better off with the C8. So questions from the UK win is there any black crush on the A9F at all? So any black crush on the A9?
So we didn't notice any. So yeah, when it's properly set up with the right settings, we didn't have any problems with black crush. And actually the gradient transition out of black was one of the best that we've tested. Overall, the gradient of the A9 was the best that we've tested, and that included the usually problematic dark areas.
Usually darker areas, not only the gradients is more problematic, but also uniformity is more. Is there a difference between uniformity and the dark areas of this one compared to others?
It's hard to tell because we've noticed that does depend on the individual unit. So
and changes over time too, right?
Yeah. So it's hard to say absolutely, but yeah, it's hard to say.
Okay, kind of a question also related to blacks. How does the inky blacks of the A9 compares to the Samsung Q9F?
So definitely the blacks of the A9 are better because they're basically perfectly deep. The A9 can produce very deep blacks with the local dimming. However, in the past we've noticed that this tend to dim small highlights. So you might actually lose some details. There's talk about a new update that's out now to fix that issue, but we haven't tested it yet. But overall, as far as the dark scene performance goes in a dark room, an OLED like the A9 is better.
Oh yeah, there's not really any question about it. If you're in a dark room, it's definitely better for the blacks.
If you are in a bright room like this though, if you were in this room and they were side by side, you might not notice the difference, but if you turn the lights off and you've got like a home theater setup or something, then definitely you will notice.
Questions from Tony Z. How aggressive is the ABL?
So one of the nice things on the Sony TVs is you can actually disable the ABL, and it's with the, I forget what the option's called. I'll have a look at it now.
Oh yeah, it's the brightness something?
Yes. So the peak luminance option. So at the moment we've got that set to high, and that will produce a brighter overall image. But if you turn that off, then it actually disables the ABL completely. The whole screen brightness though remains about 140 nits, but
which is borderline dark, right?
Yeah, it's fairly dim, but you have the option. If you want a brighter image though, then you will notice changes to
But you don't notice it that much though, right? The normal content, like movies, maybe like in some scenes that switch from like a dark scene to a bright scene, maybe. Yeah. But it's not that bad.
Overall it's not that noticeable. It's been improving over the years. Yeah, and it really takes like specific, like really large bright areas for it to be noticeable.
Yeah, I remember in a video 2 years ago that we did about one of the LG OLED, we tried to film the ABL in a more real scene stuff, so in a video games, and it took us maybe an hour to find a good spot where if you switch the camera really fast, then you can see the ABL going on, and that was a little bit off. And that was on the LG a few years ago, but it is hard kind of to reproduce, but in some cases you might see it in action.
And the biggest impact of the ABL is really if you'll be using it as a PC monitor or something where you might have large white windows that the whole screen, it's limited to a maximum brightness of about 140 nits or so.
Yeah, full screen and PC monitor, there's definitely a bigger differences. So question from Cinema Pageant. Do OLEDs basically match the performance of gaming monitors in terms of input lag and response time?
So as far as response time goes, the OLEDs like the A9 are actually almost instantaneous. It's very quick, even compared to some of the fastest LCD or VA, IPS or TN panels. It's very quick. As far as input lag goes, this TV is actually a bit more than most monitors. So most of the monitors we've tested at 60 hertz, they might have, let's say, 10 milliseconds of input lag or so, whereas this one's about 20 something, I think. I can actually check that for you.
Yeah, so there is input lag is worse. There's almost no TV that we tested that had input lag as good as monitors. Maybe one, but it's barely.
Another thing to note is that the input lag is actually it's closely related to your refresh rate. So if you've got a higher refresh rate gaming monitor, you're running it at 144 hertz or even 240 hertz, then you will get much lower input lag.
So we got, we're already at the 20 minutes marks. So now you can ask us any questions you want to answer with the A9, but we're still going to continue answering a few of your questions of the A9 that we have. So we have kind of two questions related from Y2019 and Ben Valak. Can you show us a widescreen? And then Ben Valak confirmed this. He wants to see widescreen, but he's more about the concern for uniformity.
Yep, absolutely. I'll bring one up now. So this is a full widescreen, and maybe
I'm not sure if the camera will.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we kind of see. Oh yeah, we see the uniformity.
Yeah, and you
there.
can see some of the uniformity. Although actually, it seems to be a little bit better in person maybe than it appears on the camera.
That might be the viewing angle since the camera is close. Like on OLED, we always say that viewing angle is better. So black stays perfect at an angle, but there's one thing that changes at an angle, and it's the tint the hue that shifts. So that's why, like in the center here, it's a close camera that's there. So center, the color is different, and on the edges, this is mostly viewing angle. If you bring back the camera, I'm not sure if it's gonna work. It should change. Yeah, I'm not sure we see it.
A little bit better.
The monitor is tilted over there. So.
Oh,
At the side viewing angle.
Yeah, so I don't know if we see it, and if we could be closer, you can see it's more related to viewing angle with the uniformity here. Usually for pictures of uniformity, the camera is a lot farther away, so it doesn't account for this.
Yeah. And you might be able to see, if I change between this and just the desktop, we might be able to see changes to the brightness. Overall, it's not too noticeable.
But it's not max brightness, is it?
No, it's probably not. Let's see, actually. Oh no, that is max brightness at the moment. So if we change between, let's see.
And while we change it, to answer a question from, that's why when I switched, I was good.
Yeah.
Alright, I think the page reload live, and we're back.
Okay, can you hear us? It seems we might be back now.
Yeah, I think we're back.
Sorry about that. We're having some technical problems.
Yeah, it seems that the whole office lost internet here. But at least we're back. Maybe we shouldn't do live stream on Friday. It seems that we have a few technical issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were answering. I don't know if you guys catch the last part of Daniel's answer, which was the 60 Hz versus 120 for.
That's right. So if you have a flicker frequency that matches the frequency of your content, for example, 60 FPS flicker for a 60 FPS game, then you won't experience those duplications, and you do get much less persistence blur. But some people find it distracting, or they find they've got issues watching it for longer periods of time. And it does also reduce the brightness of the image. So generally, a lower flicker frequency, or at least one that matches your content, is best for the clearest image. But as far as like eye fatigue goes, some people prefer higher flicker frequencies.
So question from Will and Mia Berg. Any thought on the newly released Samsung Q900R? More 8K TVs next year?
So it definitely looks interesting. However, it's
a bit useless.
Yeah, it
8K
seems
TV.
like it's a little bit early for 8K TVs when you can't send 8K content to it. It's and the 8K. Oh, it seems we're having more issues. Are we?
Yeah, apparently. Haven't turned it down.
I think we're back on. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, we're back, but it looks the quality, at least on mine, is it's really bad.
Oh, but it's quality is increasing. But
Yep.
hopefully we stay here. Yeah, I don't remember where the question. Oh yeah, the 8K.
Yeah. So yeah, the 8K TV definitely looks interesting, but it seems like it might be a little bit early because there's not really 8K content, and there's not really any way to send the 8K signal to the TV. So it's all basically upscaled 4K content.
Which upscale for 8K, they won't produce any benefits. The same way as 10K upscale to 4K doesn't produce any benefit. So it's mostly just a marketing. I wouldn't say stunt because they need at some point to start releasing those, but it's not useful at all for now. And even next year, there's probably going to be a few more, but nothing worth buying, at least for a few more years. Ryu Custodio asks, is there any plans to test soundbars? It would complement your TV reviews perfectly.
So we would like to, but
it's been a few years that people ask us to test soundbars.
Yeah.
And, we had a lot of discussions about it, and we definitely want to, but it's we're not sure that our current business model would work for it, mostly due to our higher cost. Like we do a lot of tests, it takes a lot of time to test stuff, and for some bars, since it's a smaller market, we're not sure that the current business models would work for this. But we're thinking about ways to make it work. So hopefully soon we're gonna test soundbars, but we don't know exactly how.
And we might have to do, I guess, find a new way to do these kinds of products that have a smaller market than the TVs. Yeah,
since it's a smaller market, it's a bit harder business-wise for us without the tests that we do. So another question from David Rubio. Will it be will the A9F be bright enough for a living room with direct sunlight?
It's really hard to say. It might not, though. It has very good anti-reflective coating. You might be able to see some of it now that we've got a few bright lights in front of us here, and so I'm not sure if you can see them reflected in the screen at all. But the anti-reflective coating of the screen is good, but it can't get as bright as an LCD TV. So if you have a lot of direct sunlight, you might be better off going with a brighter LCD. Yeah,
even like the A9F, they definitely would be great. It's like very bright TV, so that will work. Question from Gray Fox Indie. Irrespective of price, do you feel the A9F is the best OLED TV right now? So best OLED TV, if you don't look at the price tag, do you think it's the best one?
I do think so. I really like that it seems like a much more, a little bbit more refined version of the A1. I'm not sure what I think about the design, but I'm not sure that should factor into the best or not. But
Maybe probably not the best for all people, but I think majority probably, If you don't look at the price tag, it is the best, but it's not a big difference compared to the rest that are sometimes almost half the price for other OLEDs. So we're only going to take a few more questions and be done for today. So maybe like 2 or 3 more questions. So make sure to put it into the chat. And then our next Q&A, I believe it's a headphones one. But then after that, we're going to do other Q&As for TVs in a few weeks.
And also, if you watch out, this is this is kind of just a discussion about the A9, but we'll also be doing a video review of the A9. So look out in the coming weeks for that.
Oh yeah, true. We should go out soon, which have a bit more details. But you can also read the review that we posted online for the actual all numbers that we measured on it. So Philip Tixon asks, do you expect some cool upgrades for OLED next year? What would be your wishes? Don't we already have reached a great quality level for this technology? So like, do you think OLED like plateaued?
It's hard to say. I know that one of the things actually that we've had a few people complaining about is that they don't like motion interpolation. And watching movies on OLEDs, there's some stutter for like long panning shots, things like that. So,
but isn't it like kind of a inherent flaw of a perfect response time?
It might be, but if there's ways that they could, for example, adjust the response time, then I guess that's something personally that I think would be really cool and I would really enjoy.
Yeah, we never seen any OLED do it, which is kind of, I mean, it's kind of understandable why they don't do it. It's basically add blur. But if you add blur in a good way, you can actually reduce the stutter, especially for lower frame rate content. And a lot of people would like it. Like a few people have complained that they don't like watching movies on OLED because of the stutter.
And often you can add like motion interpolation, but then that comes with another set of potential problems that people might not like, the soap opera effect or artifacts and things. So. You can see now that the TV's actually dimmed. I'm not sure how long it's been for, but this is with the static content here, and you can see that if I press a button or bring up a menu, then kind of wakes up a little bit. So this is the kind of static dimming over time that can happen.
One last question for today from Samuel Turner. What determines the amount of soap opera effect in motion interpolation? Artifacting, frame skipping?
That's hard to say. I would say for most people, it's actually the frame rate that determines it. That, for example, sometimes you're watching a 24p movie, some will interpolate it up to 60 FPS, some will interpolate to 120, and that's usually the strongest soap opera effect is if you can interpolate up to 120.
And if you are curious about that technology, we did a video 2 years ago, I think it's me that presented it, about how it works, and you kind of understand like it's a trade-off between artifacts, frame skipping, and it's either you have a lot of artifacts but no frame skipping, so that's kind of a big trade-off there. But you can watch the other video that we made 2 years ago. I think if you just search like soap opera effect on YouTube, you're probably gonna be one of our first results there that should explain it more. But it's a very interesting subject, and there is that's kind of also a flaw of our reviews. There is a difference between models for this. Some are gonna skip frames more, some are gonna just go all in and don't mind the artifacts. And that's the thing we don't cover in reviews, even though we see the difference in person. And that's something that we might upgrade in our next test bench. Yeah. Which on that note, we bought all TVs for this year?
Yeah, we have. So we just bought a batch of, I think, 4 more TVs, and that's what we plan to finish off 2018 with.
Yeah, so I think they're all listed on the website. So we're done for the year almost, so we finished buying them. I guess it's going to take a few weeks just to finish testing them, like the LG E8 is going to go out soon.
Yep, so the LG E8, that'll be next week if you want to check out the review.
Yeah, so we're almost done for the year, and the reason why we are kind of closing the year already is to prepare for the next year test bench. So there's a lot of improvements that we want to do in our test. And we're probably going to do another live stream so that you can get your feedback that you have on our test for this. So we'll probably watch out in a few weeks. We're going to do a live Q&A, and we can ask you for feedback, so what you want to improve in our test bench. And we have a few months to actually work on it, improve it, and that kind of stuff. So that would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, so the plan with that is that as it's kind of a lull in the TV season, there's fewer models getting released now. We get a little bit of time to prepare to test the new models and maybe to add some tests that you might care about or improve other tests. And then that'll be next year when we start testing 2019 models. We can...
Yeah, usually out in March that it starts, usually, the TV season for us. But yeah, we're almost done all of the main ones. There's a few comments in the question about Panasonic. Panasonic, so it's not really distributed into the US. That's why it's not high on the priority list. We might do one at some point, I guess, because they are sold a little bit in Canada.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if they're still sold, but maybe a little bit.
Yeah, we don't really have a good way at the moment of like testing TVs that aren't available in the US or producing recommendation articles or these kinds of things. So it's something that we want to work on, we want to improve, but at the moment we're limited with our resources to basically just test the US models.
Yeah, hopefully at some point we're going to be able to. So that's it for you today. So thanks everyone for joining in and asking your questions. I hope you like it. And yeah, we're going to be back. There's a video next week about this TV. Our official video review is going to be out. And then there's going to be more Q&A coming soon. So make sure to stay tuned. And thanks everyone for participating.
Thanks for watching.